Secondly, the people of God, under the ancient economy, whether considered as a church or a civil commonwealth, were bound by divine authority to perform duties which were peculiar to that state of things. And these, of course, were included in their ecclesiastical and national covenants, because such were a part of the revealed will of God. But while with the abrogation of the Jewish economy these peculiarities were also abrogated, these duties which were not peculiar, but common to the present as well as to the past dispensation of the Church, remain with unabated force. These duties, however, which are common to every dispensation and of universal obligation, form the prominent matter of social covenanting. These are specified and enumerated and brought before the view of the covenanters directly as the matter covenanted to be performed. On the other hand, such duties as were peculiar to the Jewish dispensation are not directly brought forward as the matter of covenant engagement. They are only inferentially included. Such peculiarities were contingent to a particular dispensation, but not essential to social covenanting. The proper matter of covenanting, common to every dispensation, are moral duties, and these are of universal obligation. Thirdly, in acknowledgment of the true God as our God, quote, that thou shouldest enter into covenant with the Lord thy God, and into his oath which the Lord thy God maketh with thee this day, that he may establish thee today for a people unto himself, and that he may be unto thee a God, as he hath said unto thee, and as he hath sworn unto thy fathers, to Abraham, to Isaac, and to Jacob, unquote. That from Deuteronomy 29, verses 12 and 13. And Jehoiada made a covenant between the Lord and the king and the people, that they should be the Lord's people, unquote. That from 2 Kings 11:17. In the cases now cited, the covenanters engaged to take Jehovah as their God and to reject all false gods, as is evident from the context, quote, but if thine heart turn away, so that thou wilt not hear, but shalt be drawn away, and worship other gods, and serve them, I denounce unto you this day that ye shall surely perish, unquote. Deuteronomy 30, verses 17 and 18. Quote, and all the people of the land went unto the house of Baal, and brake it down. His altars and his images brake they in pieces thoroughly, unquote. 2 Kings 11, verse 18. In like manner, when a church or nation enters into covenant with God, under the Christian dispensation, they avouch Jehovah to be their God, and they reject all false gods. They renounce the idols and, quote, lying vanities, unquote, in which the depraved heart of man is disposed to trust. Fourthly, the worship of the true God is avowed and forms matter of covenanting. Quote, and all the people said unto Joshua, the Lord our God will we serve, and his voice will we obey. So Joshua made a covenant with all the people that day, unquote. Joshua 24, verses 24 and 25. And they entered into a covenant, quote, and they entered into a covenant to seek the Lord God of their fathers, unquote. 2 Chronicles 15, verse 12. It is the duty of every rational creature to worship and serve the true God. This is therefore one of the things expressed in the examples of covenanting referred to in the scriptures just quoted. Fifthly, an engagement to take the moral law as the universal rule of action is matter of social covenanting. The moral law is the rule of human obedience, and being made the matter of covenant obligation gives to the covenant a moral character. The first case of social covenanting related in Scripture is that at Mount Horeb in the wilderness of Sinai, immediately after the children of Israel came out of Egypt. In this transaction, the moral law is distinctly announced as the matter of the covenant into which they entered with God. When this was republished, it was not as a renovation of the covenant works, nor was it a remedial law, by giving a sincere, though imperfect obedience to which the people of Israel were to be justified. The whole transaction was in subserviency to the covenant of redemption. In the first place, it is subservient to this purpose, as a, quote, schoolmaster to bring us to Christ, unquote, which it does by showing the desert of sin, quote, cursed is every one that continueth not in all the things written in the book of the law to do them, unquote. 2 Chronicles 15, verse 12. By giving, quote, the knowledge of sin, for, quote, I had not known sin, but by the law, unquote, says the apostle. Quote, for I had not known lust, except the law had said, thou shalt not covet, unquote. In the second place, the law is given as a rule of life. It shows to the people of God their duty, that though they are in a new covenant relation with God, they are not freed from the obligation to obey the law. They are under the law to Christ, that they, quote, should be holy and without blame before him in love, unquote. The moral law is the rule of the believer's conduct, and for this purpose it was republished at Sinai and sworn to by the whole congregation. By this voluntary deed they covenanted to take the laws administered by Christ as a universal rule of their conduct. The covenant is stated to the people, quote, "Now therefore, if ye will obey my voice and keep my covenant," unquote. And the people gave their assent, saying, quote, "All that the Lord hath spoken will we do," unquote. The matter of the covenant is specified, namely, the 10 Commandments. The precepts of the moral law, then, are the duties which the children of Israel engaged to perform in the covenant made at Sinai, Exodus 19, verses 5 and 8, and Exodus 20, verses 1 through 17. In the recapitulation of the history, Moses restates the transaction in precisely the same form, repeating the 10 Commandments as the matter of covenant obligation, Deuteronomy 5, verses 1 through 21. In other covenant transactions, the precepts of the moral law are the duties to which the covenanters bind themselves. Quote, "And the king stood by a pillar and made a covenant before the Lord to walk after the Lord, and to keep his commandments and his testimonies and his statutes. They clave to their brethren, their nobles, and entered into a curse and into an oath to walk in God's law, which was given by Moses, the servant of God, and to observe and do all the commandments of the Lord our God, and his judgments and his statutes," unquote. 2 Kings 23, verse 3, and Nehemiah 10:29. The view of the subject is further strengthened by referring to the punishments threatened against covenant breaking, and the promises made for covenant keeping. These demonstrate the morality of the transactions. Quote, "When ye have transgressed the covenant of the Lord your God which he commanded you, and have gone and served other gods, and bowed yourselves to them, then shall the anger of the Lord be kindled against you, and ye shall perish quickly from off the good land which he hath given you," unquote. Joshua 23, verse 16. Quote, "And many nations shall pass by this city, and they shall say every man to his neighbor, Wherefore hath the Lord done this unto this great city? Then they shall answer, Because they have forsaken the covenant of the Lord their God, and worshipped other gods and served them," unquote. Jeremiah 22, verses 8 and 9. Quote, "Wherefore it shall come to pass, if ye hearken to these judgments, and keep and do them, that the Lord thy God shall keep unto thee the covenant and the mercy which he swore unto thy fathers," unquote. Deuteronomy 7, verse 12. If in these instances, idolatry is the sin by which covenant obligation is violated, and the mercy of God is the promise with which covenant keeping is rewarded, both of which establish the morality of social covenanting, because they establish the fact that the matter of covenanting is the moral law. Fourth, the duty of social covenanting is recognized in the prophecies which refer to New Testament times. A great part of prophecy is intended to illustrate the condition of the church and the world under the gospel dispensation. It shows what glorious things God will perform on behalf of Zion. It describes the character and frequently points out the duties of her citizens. Prophecy is often an anticipated history of what the people of God would be and what they would do under the blissful and universal influence of the gospel. Among these, social covenanting finds a place. It is foretold in prophecy by the Spirit of God that this duty should be performed in subsequent and better times. Such a prophecy, I maintain, constitutes a moral obligation and is of equal authority with a command. The obligation, however, let it be borne in mind, does not arise simply from the fact that it is foretold. Many things are subjects of prophecy which are opposed to the will of God. The argument in favor of social covenanting which is derived from prophecy is satisfactory, not because it is foretold that men would covenant. Prophecy tells us beforehand that men would commit sin, but sin does not therefore become a duty. Prophecy in such cases is a prospective history of the actions of wicked men, but it furnishes no vindication of these actions. It tells us indeed that they would be, but it leaves them as they are, branded with the mark of divine disapprobation. The argument from prophecy is satisfactory because it foretells that social covenanting would be used as a means of reforming the church of God and the nations of the earth. Because it is obviously spoken of with divine approbation, because it is represented as an attainment, and finally because it is spoken of as a blessing. Point 1. Having explained how prophecy may be used as an argument for social covenanting, I now proceed to the proof of the proposition that it is the subject of prophecies which refer to New Testament times. The Spirit of God speaking by Isaiah says, quote, "In that day shall 5 cities in the land of Egypt speak the language of Canaan and swear to the Lord of hosts," unquote. Isaiah 19, verse 18. A talented writer who has signalized himself by his enmity to covenanting denies that this prophecy refers to New Testament times, a position in which he will be sustained by all, I presume, who, like himself, are hostile to the duty as the only possible means of invalidating the argument. That the prophecy, however, refers to the gospel era is evident from the context. No state of things preceding this period could justify such application of the passage. Nay, more, it is evident that the period spoken of is yet future. For the prophet goes on to say, quote, "In that day shall Israel be the third with Egypt and with Assyria, even a blessing in the midst of the land, whom the Lord of hosts shall bless, saying, Blessed be Egypt, my people, and Assyria, the work of my hands, and Israel, mine inheritance." Unquote. This has not yet been realized. It remains as a part of the future glory of the church, when the sons of Abraham shall acknowledge Jesus of Nazareth as the Messiah, when the followers of Muhammad shall have submitted to Christianity. Then, when the cross has triumphed over the prejudice of the Jews and the infidelity of the Mohammedans, quote, "Shall Israel be the third with Egypt and with Assyria, even a blessing in the midst of the land," unquote. "And then, too, shall 5 cities in the land of Egypt," quote, "swear to the Lord of hosts." Quote, "I apprehend that the grand accomplishment of these verses, and perhaps of other parts of this extraordinary prophecy, is still to be expected, for though Christianity flourished much in these regions for some time, yet nothing hitherto seems to have occurred fully adequate to the expressions here employed." Unquote. In this judgment every reader will acquiesce whose mind is not biased by a preconceived opinion, which demands the sacrifice of truth. The context determines the time to which the prophecy refers. It is that of the gospel, and of this time it is predicated, 5 cities in the land of Egypt shall, quote, "swear to the Lord of hosts," unquote. The most respectable commentators explain this of social covenanting. Quote, "They shall swear to the Lord of hosts, not only swear by him, giving him the honor of appealing to him, as all nations did to the gods they worshipped, but they shall by a solemn oath and vow devote themselves to his honor and bind themselves to his service. They shall swear to cleave to him with purpose of heart, and to worship him, not occasionally, but constantly. They shall swear allegiance to him as their king, to Christ, to whom all judgment is committed." Unquote. Second point. The Spirit of God, again speaking by Isaiah, says, quote, "One shall say, I am the Lord's, and another shall call himself by the name of Jacob, and another shall subscribe with his hand unto the Lord, and surname himself by the name of Jacob." Unquote. Isaiah 44, verse 5. Whatever allusion there may be in this part of prophecy to the deliverance of the Jews, which was shortly afterwards realized by the Edict of Cyrus, the allusion can only be of secondary consideration. The ultimate fulfillment of the promise includes a blessing of infinitely more importance than the deliverance of the Jewish people from the Babylonish captivity. It includes the deliverance of the world from the dominion of Satan through the knowledge of Christ and him crucified. The return of the Jews from Babylon was in some respects a type of this great work, and is therefore frequently introduced into the prophecy. Of this, every reader may satisfy himself by examining the context, particularly the 42nd and 49th chapters. The extraordinary outpouring of the Spirit of God, which is promised in the preceding part of the chapter, and of which the remarkable things predicated in the 5th verse are the effects, removes all doubt as to the period of the church to which it refers. It is the gospel dispensation, for in respect of this, the promise is, quote, "I will pour out my Spirit upon all flesh." Joel 2, verse 28.